Something is happening in Britain that Westminster is terrified to admit. And last night proved they're right to be scared. Reform UK just demolished Labour in Stevenage. 39.2% of the vote. From 0 candidates last time to first place in one election cycle. Labour, the party currently running Britain, crashed by 12.4% and limped into second place in their own heartland. This wasn't a close race. This was an annihilation, and it's a warning shot that the entire political establishment is desperately trying to ignore. Before we go further, if you want the political stories mainstream media won't touch, hit subscribe. It's free, takes 1 second, and helps us keep bringing you the truth they'd rather you didn't hear. Cheers if you did. Now, back to what's really happening on the ground. Because Stevenage wasn't even the biggest story of the night. Over in Fenland, Reform UK took the Garrard ward from an independent candidate with a staggering 44.6% of the vote. The swing? 47 points. 47 points. That's not a swing. That's a political earthquake registering on the Richter scale. To put that in perspective, a 10-point swing is usually considered massive in British politics. Tony Blair's historic 1997 landslide, the one that redrew the political map for a generation, was built on swings far smaller than what Reform is achieving every single Thursday. Yet somehow we're supposed to believe this isn't a story worth paying attention to. That this is just noise, just protest votes that will evaporate once people get bored. Except it's not evaporating, it's accelerating. Nigel Farage took to social media this morning with all the restraint of a man who just won the lottery, declaring that Reform UK is now the first party to win 50 local council by-elections since May 1st. 50 wins. Let that number sink in while you consider what the other parties have been doing during the same period. The Liberal Democrats are in second place with 45 by-election wins. But here's the thing they don't want you to notice. They've only gained 17 seats overall. Why? Because they keep losing the ones they already had. They're running on a treadmill, winning seats in one place while losing them in another, going nowhere fast. The Conservatives have won just 16 by-elections and somehow managed to lose 17 seats in the process. Think about that. They're showing up to the match and scoring more own goals than actual goals. It would be impressive if it weren't so utterly tragic. This is a party that governed Britain for 14 years, reduced to political irrelevance, so complete they can't even hold their own council seats. And then there's Labour. Oh, Labour, the party of government. The party that won a massive parliamentary majority just months ago. The party that supposedly represents the working people of Britain. They've won just 13 council by-elections since May while losing 34 seats they previously held. 34 seats. Gone. Evaporated. Handed over to Reform, the Lib Dems, and anyone else willing to show up and promise something different. This is not the record of a party with a secure grip on power. This is the record of a party hemorrhaging support faster than the Titanic took on water, and the captain is still insisting the ship is unsinkable. Now, before anyone accuses me of cherry-picking data, let's be fair, Reform did suffer one setback last night. The Liberal Democrats managed to pick up a council seat from Reform in Bromsgrove, which I'm sure gave Sir Ed Davey something to smile about during his morning paddleboarding session or whatever publicity stunt he's got lined up today. But one loss against 2 wins and 48 other victories since May, that's hardly a crisis for Farage. That's the political equivalent of losing a tenner after winning the lottery. Annoying, certainly. A catastrophe? Hardly. What's particularly fascinating about Reform's rise is how comprehensive it's been. This isn't success in one type of area or one demographic. Since May's local elections, Reform has gained 43 new council seats overall. Not just won by-elections in places they already held, but actually expanded their footprint across the country in ways that should have every strategist in Westminster wide awake at night. They're picking up seats in working-class areas like Stevenage, where Labour used to dominate without even trying. They're winning in coastal communities like Fenland, where political allegiances have been shifting for years, and the old parties stopped listening decades ago. They're establishing themselves as a legitimate alternative to the establishment parties in parts of Britain that have felt ignored, abandoned, and actively betrayed by Westminster for generations. Meanwhile, the Green Party, despite all the media coverage they receive, despite their rise in certain opinion polls, despite their increasingly prominent role on university campuses and in metropolitan areas, have gained exactly 2 new council seats since May. That tells you everything you need to know about the difference between political parties that look good on social media and political parties that can actually win elections in the real world. The Greens might have enthusiastic supporters who turn up to protests and share infographics about climate change, But when it comes to convincing ordinary people in ordinary towns to actually vote for them, they're about as effective as a chocolate teapot. The truly remarkable thing about Reform's success is that it's happening every single week. Thursday is council by-election day in Britain, and Thursday is rapidly becoming Nigel Farage's favourite day of the week because his party keeps notching up victories like clockwork. This is not a flash in the pan. This is not a temporary protest vote that will evaporate once the novelty wears off. This is sustained political momentum building week after week, month after month, creating what looks increasingly like an unstoppable force that the establishment parties have absolutely no idea how to counter. Cast your mind back to May's local elections. Reform UK swept to what can only be described as an astonishing victory, gaining 677 councillors and taking control of 10 councils. Experts predicted they'd do well. Nobody, and I mean nobody, expected them to do that well. And it hasn't stopped since. Reform has led in every single national opinion poll since early April. Every single one. Let me say that again because it bears repeating. Every single national opinion poll for over 6 months has shown Reform UK in first place. Some polls have shown Farage's party polling higher than Labour and the Conservatives combined. Read that again. Higher than Labour and the Conservatives combined. The two parties that have dominated British politics for over a century, that have passed power back and forth between them since the 1920s, reduced to also-rans, while a party that most people had barely heard of 5 years ago storms ahead. This is not normal. This is unprecedented. This is the kind of political realignment that happens once in a generation, and it's happening right now, right in front of us. So here's the question everyone should be asking. Why is this happening? What has driven so many British voters into the arms of Nigel Farage after years of being told by the media, by politicians, by so-called experts, that he's beyond the pale, that his views are extreme, that Reform UK is not a serious party? The answer is actually quite simple. And it's the same answer that's explained political upheavals across the Western world over the past decade. People are sick to death of being lied to, patronised, and ignored by politicians who claim to represent them while doing absolutely nothing to improve their lives. Labour promised change. They promised to fix the NHS, to revitalise the economy, to make Britain work for working people again. What have they actually delivered? Higher taxes, more regulations, continued dysfunction in public services, the same old Westminster Games dressed up with a slightly different coloured rosette. People aren't stupid. They can see that nothing has fundamentally changed despite all the grand promises and elaborate rhetoric. The cost of living is still crushing families. The NHS waiting lists keep growing. Immigration numbers keep breaking records. Crime keeps rising. And the politicians keep making excuses. So when Reform UK comes along and says, we'll actually do things differently, we'll actually listen to your concerns about immigration, crime, the economy, without calling you racist or thick or deplorable, people are willing to give them a chance. Because what's the alternative? Sticking with Labour and hoping this time they'll actually deliver on their promises? Going back to the Conservatives, who had 14 years to fix these problems and made most of them worse. The Conservatives, meanwhile, have learned absolutely nothing from their catastrophic defeat. They're still fighting amongst themselves about who should lead the party, still trying to work out whether they should move left or right, still completely disconnected from the concerns of ordinary voters who trusted them for 14 years and got precisely nothing in return except broken promises and political chaos. The Tory party is in such disarray that they're losing council seats to Reform, while Reform is simultaneously taking seats from Labour. Think about what that means. Reform is beating Labour in Labour areas and beating Conservatives in Conservative areas. That takes a special kind of appeal. Or rather, it takes a special kind of incompetence from the establishment parties. The Liberal Democrats? They're doing what Liberal Democrats always do. Picking up seats here and there through ruthlessly efficient local campaigning while having absolutely no coherent national message or vision for the country. They're brilliant at fixing your potholes and answering your emails. But ask them what they'd actually do if they were running Britain, and you get vague platitudes about being sensible and moderate. But here's what really matters. Here's what should have alarm bells ringing across Westminster, louder than Big Ben on New Year's Eve. If this momentum continues, and there is absolutely no indication it won't continue, we are looking at a complete transformation of British politics at the next general election. Seats that have been Labour for generations since the party was founded could fall to Reform. Conservative heartlands that have never elected anyone other than a Tory, where blue rosettes have been passed down like family heirlooms, could suddenly turn purple. The entire electoral map of Britain could be redrawn in a way that makes the 2019 election look like a minor adjustment. We're not talking about a few seats changing hands. We're talking about the potential collapse of the two-party system that has defined British politics for a century. We're talking about a political earthquake that could reshape Parliament, reshape government, reshape the entire conversation about what's possible in British politics. And the establishment. They're either too arrogant or too terrified to acknowledge what's happening. They're still operating on the assumption that this is a temporary aberration, that people will come to their senses, that the old order will reassert itself if they just wait it out. But every Thursday, when those council by-election results come in, reality keeps proving them wrong. Every opinion poll that shows reform in first place chips away at their denial. Every seat that turns purple is another crack in a dam that's already starting to break. This is the kind of political realignment that happens once in a generation. The question is, will you be informed when it happens, or will you be caught off guard like the establishment parties currently pretending everything's fine? If you want to stay ahead of the political earthquakes the mainstream media ignores, subscribe now and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Share this with anyone who still thinks the old parties have everything under control. Because the Britain they knew is changing, fast. And what comes next will define British politics for decades. The only question is whether you'll see it coming.